And for more on this, our correspondent Ross Cullen joins us live from Paris, and we are also joined by Peter Kleppe, who is the editor-in-chief of Brussels Report and a policy analyst for the EU Brexit Eurozone from Brussels. Thank you both for joining us. Ross, I will start with you. Give us a glimpse of the situation on ground. Have the protests escalated?
Yeah, this weekend we did see these protests over the construction of what's described as a mega basin, so a large reservoir, and there's a number of reservoirs that are going to be constructed, an agreement between the states and farms in the area to try to capture as much water as possible in the autumn and the winter to deal with spring and summer droughts, which are becoming more frequent. We even had a winter droughts this January and February as well. That has meant that the water levels already so far this year are low, and that is going to make the situation especially complicated heading into June, July and August, the end of the spring and into the summer as well. We did see pretty intense clashes between the police and the demonstrators this weekend at Sainte-Soline, that location where it's taking place towards the western Atlantic coast in France. And the situation obviously comes on top of the 9 major days of mobilisation that we've seen against the pension reform, with the 10th one due to get underway tomorrow, March the 28th.
Ross, what's the significance of the water reservoir, and what are the protesters agitating the government to do?
Well, they don't want to see the construction. They say that it is going to be impacting the local environment to a detrimental degree. They think there are other ways that should be thought through rather than constructing enormous reservoirs in a place which is already under pressure environmentally from the ongoing drought. So they do want to see the halting of the construction of these reservoirs. It's not an isolated example. We have seen previous attempts in previous years to build such reservoirs, usually met as well with protests by environmental activists, and this is the latest example of that green push to try to deal with the water shortage that we have at the same time as trying to reflect environmental concerns.
Peter, let me come to you. Let's talk about the wider scope. Campaigners say construction of giant water basins to irrigate crops will distort access to water amid drought conditions. Are their calls justified?
Well, to be honest, that's always hard to say. I'm sure there are some legitimate arguments to back up their complaints. I'm sure that there are some legitimate arguments from the farming side, as you could hear. In the summer, there's been a lot of droughts, so it sort of makes sense to to expand reservoir capacity. But I think fundamentally, look, France is a country that is quite keen to protest. But it looks like many people are losing trust in the judicial system to maybe legally challenge these kind of ventures, or in the democratic process to contact their elected representatives and to go in that direction. Many of them sort of do not even seem to believe in that anymore, and fundamentally that's also true for the larger environmental movement. Where we can see across Europe, especially the climate activists, I think radicalizing in their actions, sometimes not even shunning violence.
Let's talk about the reality here. France is fretting about an extended drought and prospects of more wildfires in another long summer. What can be done right now by the authorities to avoid this from turning into a disaster, Peter?
Well, I mean, to sort of build up reservoir capacity seems like the most obvious fix. Of course, we're talking about large-scale farming. You know, this is France. We're not talking about some modest family farm or something. So this is industrial-scale farming. So I think it's kind of hard to come up with solutions that are not going to impact the environment in one way or another. If you take an absolutist extremist view, then any water reservoir is always gonna damage the environment. So obviously this has to be limited. But if you want farming, if you want industry, if you want food security, then you have to accept that environmental concerns need to go hand in hand with economic concerns.
I've been talking to the editor-in-chief of Brussels Report, Peter Kleppe, and our correspondent, Ross Cullen. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your insights today on WION World is One. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.